See, one thing as a leader, Sharmi, that I always admired, and that's a message that I want to give social sectors. When you kind of came in as a part-time consultant, so to say, Equibeing didn't have anything from an HR angle, our labor laws were all over. I remember the rental agreement, which you put in place. So what it is as a leader that I've seen out of Sharmi that always inspires me is she's not somebody who's going with a KRA or a framework, I mean, you just came in and, Equibeing was this really dynamically growing fast organization, and you never hesitated to pick up those pieces and sort of pull it together to enable us to grow, just going even beyond finance. But coming back, I mean, many times we have had this friendly chat saying, see, when it comes to due diligence, when it comes to accountability, right? Because here, when we talk about a social sector, it's about every person who's investing. Every penny matters because they are bringing it from a social impact point of view. So what has been your experience when it comes to accountability in the social sector, especially obviously with money and the impact? As well as the fact that, we have had to walk very tight ropes when it comes to expenditure and cost. How would you throw some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, of course, I've been associated with very large organizations where, funding was not a big issue because you always had funds. You just had to put controls and governance in place as to how you're spending it.
Yes.
But, in the social sector, I realized that, getting every penny itself is a very daunting task. And as you said, like about due diligence and all that, though I am basically a chartered accountant, I realized that I can't restrict myself to putting certain processes from a finance point of view alone.
Yes.
Because as you may have observed during our due diligence, it is a holistic due diligence that they do, whether it is from the labor law point of view or from taxation. It is very in-depth, and I would say that it was much more difficult than handling an audit in Vodafone. That is the depth in which it was done by, Ernst & Young. And of course, it was a very, great feeling to have passed that test, I would say, which sort of reinforces our belief that, our systems and processes are working. Of course, we have a long way to go. There are lots of improvements to be brought in, but with the available resources and talent that, we had, I think we pulled it off quite well.
Absolutely. We spoke about minimal resources. We spoke about the need to kind of, manage. And I know we started with Tally, and, you've been actually getting even modifications there. But through this experience of 25-26, you are now leading us to put in technology that's going to take us more seamlessly through things. What is your, 2 cents on this technology that we are now going to bring in with Zoho books, and even in terms of procurement and the entire thing, expense management? You're looking at it holistically and leading us. What would be your couple of, how do you look at it in terms of how it should benefit employees, donors, the whole system?
Yeah, so as the organization grows, it is very difficult to have, or rather, manage things manually beyond a point. You have processes in place, like everything has to be approved by so and so. There is a delegation of authority, and we are following it. But what I'm looking at is, say, a couple of years down the line, we get into a due diligence or some audit for whatever purpose. So how do we prove that? It is not possible for us to dig up all the mails or pull out all the physical papers and satisfy the auditors, right? So that is where I feel technology has a big role to play. Because as the volumes go up, I don't think anything other than technology can help us,
So one of the things that we have always observed, and we have spoken and discussed many times, is the fact that, see, Equibeing was lucky that, you kind of came in and you kind of, are an in-house consultant advising on finance, governance and controls. But there are so many good NGOs out there who may not be as lucky, to be it in terms of access to subject matter expertise or in terms of access to technology, etc. So given that the sector is so important for our climate, environment and, various social aspects to change, what do you think could be a good industry practice when it comes to, access to financial subject matter expertise and tools?
Yeah, I think that is an area where most of the NGOs would require support. As you rightly said, it is not very easy to have an in-house chartered accountant, especially, given the kind of access to funds most of the NGOs have, especially the smaller ones. And I think it would be excellent if we can have a forum where finance professionals and, of course, other professionals from other what you call
Legal and other
legal
areas.
or other areas, labor law consultants can come together and share their best practices and learnings, so that everybody gets benefited. Because currently, even though I'm a chartered accountant, in many instances I felt that even when I check with my fellow chartered accountants, it is very difficult to get guidance on certain matters, because most of them have always been working in the for-profit sector. So that is an area where I feel people should, in the social sector, should come together and share their learnings and best practices.
Absolutely.
Which will help,
Absolutely.
even the smaller NGOs.
Yeah, and I'm sure many of us who are listening to this, I do remember SVP once talking about, bringing a forum like this, and it's a great point that we need access to experts, so that more NGOs can kind of thrive. But having said that, I think the beauty of Equibeing and the journey like Equibeing is the fact that diverse leaders like you, Sharmi, have kind of thrown in your hat, and you play the role that you play at Equibeing, and therefore this leadership talk is so important, because this is really leadership talking, not just for Equibeing but for the sector itself. Thank you, Sharmi, and it was great as always conversing with you.
Thank you, AL. I would say I should be thanking you for giving me this opportunity where I feel so lucky to be part of this journey, where we are touching so many lives.
I know, and thank you, Sharmi, and it's great actually that we are in this together.
Thank you.